What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today I'm finally ready to bring you my review of the Wasp Hero Pack, and I'm a little bit delighted. But you see, a very weird thing happened last night. I'd played a bunch of games with Wasp, and I was all getting ready to do a not negative review, but certainly not one of my favourite characters. And yet I sat down to have a play with Wasp yesterday, and I took her out against Rhino and Claw and Ultron, the three villains from the core set. And I had, far and away, the best run with Wasp that I'd had in all the time I've been playing her over the past week. So what does that tell me about Wasp? If you want the too long didn't watch version, and that would be sad, please watch the rest of the video. I'll be sad if you don't. I think Wasp has an awful lot of potential. She comes out the box with aggression, and remember, these reviews are generally focused around the out-of-the-box deck. Her potential for damage is unrivaled, and I mean that literally. In a multiplayer game, and I'm generally playing solo, but in a multiplayer game where other people are giving you time to heal and taking care of the threat, etc., she can be an absolute powerhouse, and certainly her signature cards are good enough that you can go and do some deck building here, and she will be significantly better. Out of the box, I think Wasp is fun, but I think sometimes Wasp does not necessarily always have the tools to prevent you being a little bit overwhelmed. But with the nice little preamble out the way, let's go and have a chat about Wasp proper, shall we? Now, starting off with Wasp, she is one of those three-sided heroes, and it's basically impossible to talk about Wasp without comparing her to the other three-sided hero, that being Ant-Man. And what I will say is, when I play Ant-Man, I am constantly swapping between forms, because my highest thwart is in Tiny Hero, but my highest attack and defense is in Giant Hero, and I can remove a threat when I switch into Tiny Hero, and I can deal a damage when I go into Giant Hero, so I end up flicking between Giant and Tiny Hero all the time. Wasp doesn't have the cards that makes me want to do that. In Tiny Hero, she's got just every stat one lower than Giant Hero, so I'm never going to want to be in Tiny Hero just to use my basic powers. And after or an event I play, defeat a minion or side scheme, I deal 1 damage to the villain. So yes, there is a timing issue here in terms of if I'm playing an event to get rid of a minion or side scheme, try and be in Tiny Hero. But generally that means starting the turn in Giant Hero, flicking to Tiny to use the event, and then flicking back to Giant next turn. It gets a little bit awkward. It's fine, but I don't find myself flicking between them so much. In terms of the basic stats, in Tiny Hero, I'm not loving it. In Giant Hero, I am loving it. 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 defense is great. Hit points of 11 isn't low, but I'm greedy apparently and would like it higher. And hand size of 5 in either hero mode, or 6 in alter ego mode, again, is fine. It's what we would expect. What I did find a bit weird is Giant Wasp's skill I'm generally not loving. You can swap your threat and attack to go whatever you want. So you can take 1 threat off of a side scheme and 1 of the main scheme. You can do 1 damage to a minion and 1 to the villain. And this is great for pinging off tough counters. But generally speaking, I wasn't loving this so much, because attack and thwart of 2 are decent, but I rarely wanted to split them. And then I played against Ultron. And for those of you that have played against Ultron, you will know that Ultron basically spends the entire time just throwing minion after minion after minion at you. They're all Ultron drones, and they've all got 1 health. So this basically lets you take out every turn just 2 Ultron drones, and that was amazing. Generally speaking, I was staying in Giant Hero mode. I was using my basic powers. I defended quite a lot because defensive 3 is great, and I'm not loving much else about Wasp generally as a hero. So attack when I could and defend when I had to, and that was about right. I will say Nadia Van Dyne free recovery is standard, but shuffling up to 2 cards of a printed Science Resource from your discard pile into your deck, that's a skill I used every time I was in alter ego mode. It just lets you stack your deck with cards you really want. I adored that. So Wasp as a hero I'm fairly indifferent towards, but Wasp's suite of cards, oh, I'm loving it. You see, Ant-Man comes along. We've got 4 cost free health, don't like the health being lower than the cost. But you've got 2 thwart or 2 attack, taking 1 damage back, which is good. But if you're in giant hero form, Ant-Man's got 3 attack, and if you're in tiny hero form, Ant-Man's got 3 thwart. And this I loved, and incidentally did make me switch between the hero modes. Having an ally that can attack or thwart for free 3 times, I loved Ant-Man. 4 cost is a lot. You know, when you're talking about a 5-card hand, assuming you've got no double resources, you've basically got to play Ant-Man as your only card for the turn. And there were so many times it was absolutely worth it. And then we had cards to basically do a whole bunch of damage, but also a bunch of other fun things. So, Pinpoint Strike, there's 3 copies of these. It's a 3-cost event that deals 7 damage to an enemy. But if you're in tiny hero form, you deal 8 and you gain overkill, which incidentally, phenomenal for taking out minions. 3 health minion, do 3 to the minion, and then 5 to the villain. So again, this would be a reason to be in tiny mode, but I suppose a difference to try and make myself clear here. Ant-Man, I was flicking back and forth like every turn. Wasp, I was flicking back and forth every couple of turns to use specific cards only. Giant Help is a 2-cost event that lets you remove 3 threat from a scheme, or if you're in giant hero form, 3 threat from the schemes as you like. And I did spend most of my time in giant hero form, so this one was pretty much a godsend to me a lot of the time. Great for taking out side schemes, and then taking out a little bit from the main scheme as well. Now, Rapid Growth was kind of a fun one. It's a 1-cost event that when you use one of your hero's basic powers, you change to your giant hero form and get +2. So you're basically thwarting or attacking for 4? Yeah, that sounds good. And incidentally, when you go from 2 to 4, the ability to spread it amongst different schemes/enemies becomes a lot more powerful than it was before. Wasp Sting is a 2-cost event. If you're in giant hero form, deal a total of 4 damage divided among enemies as you choose. Another one that was amazing against Ultron and his stupid drones. And if you're in tiny form, you deal 5 damage to an enemy. This one really depends on which villain you're playing against and how many minions there are on the field. And then there's Pim Particles, and Pim Particles is a weird one, because like I've said, generally I wanted to be in giant mode, but Pim Particles, it's a resource card, but after you spend it, you get to draw a card if you're in tiny form, which generally I really wanted to do. So this was another one of those use your powers in hero, giant hero, and then flick to tiny so you can play Pim Particles, which didn't always work timing wise, because sometimes you wanted to play a card that forced you to be in hero mode, boo, hiss, etc. If you did have damage on though, healing 2 from playing a resource card was very, very cool indeed. And then we get to the one-offs. Biosynthetic Wings, good card. Gives you the aerial trait, and then when you would take any amount of damage, if you're in tiny form, you exhaust it to prevent one of that damage. I blocked a lot in giant hero form because the defensive 3 really was amazing, and you've got so many cards in the pre-made deck that can do great damage. I didn't always feel the need to attack, so I did spend a lot more time defending here than I would with your average hero. I'm not a guy that defends much playing this game. Wasp was very much an exception. But this gave you an option, but it forced you to be in tiny hero mode, and again, tiny hero mode is fine if you're playing an event to take out a minion or a side scheme, and it's good for some particular cards, but it's not where I spent a lot of my time, which of course is a lot of the skill in playing Wasp. Tiny hero is clearly underpowered, objectively so. All the stats are 1 lower than Wasp, well, the basic powers at least, but there are reasons to flick into it. Red Room Training gives you Retaliate 1 in giant form and Piercing in tiny form. This is another one of those, if you could get it out early, was a huge advantage. The Retaliate 1, especially when you're defending a lot, really is cool. And then Wasp's Helmet is a weird one. It's a 2-cost upgrade. When you're in giant hero form, you get +1 thwart. When you're in tiny hero form, you get +1 attack. But your attack isn't great in tiny hero form anyway. But like I've said, sometimes cards will essentially force you into being in tiny hero form, which, and again, maybe it's just the way I'm playing it, it's not generally a place that I particularly wanted to be. I was generally in giant hero form unless cards were, with their effects, essentially force me into tiny. So there were a lot of games, and I don't always do this with signature upgrades, but there were a bunch of games where I would forego this for other cards. Of course, when I say forgo it for other cards, I'm using it to pay to do 8 damage with a pinpoint strike. That's kind of worth it. Now, those are the Wasp cards. No matter how you build your deck or not, those are the cards you're going to have. Out of the box, it is an aggression card, and it's a very, very cool aggression deck. I said card, I meant deck. You know I meant deck. 4 is a 4-cost ally. She's very expensive, but you do have the 4 health, and the 2 attack taking the damage is nice. But after you play her, you deal 2 damage to the villain, 3 if you paid with a physical resource. And I'll be honest with you, there aren't all that many physical resources in the Wasp deck as it comes out. In terms of Wasp signature cards, you've got a couple of any type resources, but no physical. No, that's a lie, 2 physical. And then in terms of out of the box, there are a few, but there were way too many turns I had 4 in hand, and I didn't have a physical resource to pay. But you're still dealing 2 damage when you play her, and you've got a 4 health ally, which is dealing 2 damage when you attack. It's basically 4 turns of doing 2 damage, plus an extra 2 or 3 damage. Works quite nicely. Wasp is one of those ones, I think if you're going to use it, you need to deck build a little bit. Because she's got free attack taking 1 damage back, which is phenomenal. I adore that. But she basically has health equal to the number of energy resources you use to pay for her. But again, there aren't that many energy resources. You've got a couple of energy and a couple of any type in her signature suite. And then to be fair, there are 5 and a couple of any type. Oh, there are 8 and a couple of any type, I suppose, in her aggression deck generally. But again, no, 9. Sorry, I forgot about the double. But there are still way too many turns when I couldn't really play Wasp because I didn't have, you want to be playing 3 or 4 here. And I just didn't have it. And maybe it's a hand I was having, but I played a bunch of games with Wasp. And I'm telling you that Janet Van Dyne did not hit the field very often because I did not have the energy resources. Having said that, get into a bit of deck building, really pack your deck with a few more energy resources, and things will change very, very quickly. Into the Fray, there's 3 copies of I Adore Into the Fray. It is a 3-cost event, deals 6 damage to a minion, but for every excess point of damage you do, you remove 1 threat from the scheme. So I'd often use this to take out a free health minion while removing 3 threat from the main scheme. Oh, that is absolutely worth it. Similarly, surprise attack, absolutely love it. When you change form, you deal 3 damage to an enemy, 4 if you paid with a physical resource. And there were too many turns again when I didn't have a physical resource. These cards in the Wasp deck did not seem to fire as often as I'd like. The ones that demanded a particular kind of resource, at least playing out of the box. But still, 1 cost 3 damage, pinging away here and there, taking out minions. Yes. Absolutely yes. We obviously have the power of aggression here. You see this in every aggression deck. It's a double resource when you're paying for an aggression card. And you're playing an aggression deck. So cool. 3 copies of Boot Camp. I'm not sure whether you need 3 copies of Boot Camp in this deck. I'm going to be honest with you. It is a 3-cost support. You play it under any player's control. Only 1 per player. Each ally gets +1 attack. And again, if you've got Boot Camp in play and you're playing things like Ant-Man, Ant-Man's got 4 attack when you're in giant mode. Janet Van Dyne Wasp has got 4 attack. This is ridiculous. Having said that, I'm playing solo most of the time in a multiplayer game where I can have a boot camp and then I can play boot camp for my allies. No, that's the wrong word. Allies actually mean something in this game. My fellow players, and then all of their allies, the actual use of the word, all get extra attack as well. That sounds pretty gosh darned good to me. We then had 3 copies of Lying in Wait. 1 per player, but it's a 1-cost card, and after a minion engages you, you discard it to deal 3 to that minion. Lie in Wait is one of those cards I wanted in play all the time because it's phenomenal, and I love it. And there were so many times where the villain would reveal a minion and Lie in Wait would just take it out. It was hilarious. There are then a couple of basic cards as well. We've got Ironheart. Now, Ironheart's very weak. I don't like the 2 health. I don't like the 1 thwart. But it's only a 2 cost. I don't like the 1 attack either. But it's only a 2 cost and you draw a card when you play it. So Ironheart is very much a case of you pay the 2, draw a card, so you're only really paying 1. And then you attack or thwart for 1 and then defend a big attack with her. That's what she does. You draw a card, so you're only really paying 1 to play her, and you attack or thwart for 1 and use her to defend against an attack no matter how big. Come on, no overkill. So you know what? Sounds fine by me, ladies and gentlemen. Spider-Man I did like, not a fan of the thwart, but I love the 2 attack. And after you play Spider-Man, you choose thwart or attack and you get +2 until the end of the phase for that. So, and again, you're generally going attack here because a thwart of 1 isn't great. But usually this works as 1 turn of attacking for 4, 1 turn of attacking for 2, and then defending a big attack. Sounds good to me. Swarm Tactics is a really nice card. It's a 1-cost event that changes form and readies your hero, which is phenomenal. But if you're playing solo, it's not so good because it only works if you've got your Ant-Man ally out, and sometimes you will. But this is far better if you are playing a multiplayer game where 1 person is Wasp and 1 person is Ant-Man. Of course, if you're doing that, then your Ant-Man ally can't be played, same name as the Ant-Man hero, and that's sad because that ally is amazing. You've then got the Power in All of Us, maximum 2 per deck, but it's a double resource when you pay for basic, which is nice, but it's only really Ironheart or Spider-Man you can use it for. And then, or Quinn Carrier, I suppose, which is the last card in the deck, which you exhaust it to generate any kind of resource. Again, it's you put it on the field, and it's giving you extra juice as you run through the game. That sounds good. The fact of the matter is, I don't think out of the box playing solo, Wasp, which I know is how a lot of people play the game, incidentally, I don't think she's one of the more powerful heroes. There were games that I would play as Wasp that I would lose, and I'd just be sitting there going, if I'm playing Doctor Strange, I know I'm winning this game. But then again, I do love me some Doctor Strange. Having said that, the damage potential here, when you're looking at cards like Pinpoint Strike, like Wasp Sting, like your Ant-Man ally, there's a lot of damage hitting the field very, very quickly. But you've got stuff like Into the Fray that can really help you to remove threat from the main scheme as well, so it's not like you don't even have options there. I found at times with Wasp I was getting a little bit overwhelmed, and if there were some good minions on the field, I was struggling to take them out while also taking out the villain, because there are too many turns where you're just essentially playing Pinpoint Strike, so it's either taking out a minion or you're dealing damage to the villain. And don't get me wrong, if you're against a low HP minion, Pinpoint Strike will do both, but against bigger minions, it's not so easy. There were too many turns when I couldn't do enough. I could use Into the Fray to take out a minion, but there wasn't any threat on the main scheme, and I couldn't do any damage to the villain, but I needed to take out the minion, etc, etc. But if you're playing a multiplayer game, she gets so much better. And if you get into deck building, and you take away the out-of-the-box deck, and you just use her 15 standard cards, which are great, incidentally, you can make a phenomenal deck with Wasp. Not one I'm going to be bringing out time and time again, playing out of the box, but when I'm in the mood for some deck building, she's gonna be high up on me list. So I'm gonna go ahead and give her between 3 and 4 Wassies. We don't give half Wassies. That would be barbaric. Have I been scoring these hero packs? I think I've scored 1 or 2. I'm gonna be from here on. I wanna know what you think. Let me know in the comment section. Get us, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wasp. That's where we talk Marvel Champions and all kinds of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCGradio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wassie Plays.